Would you guys want to stay at a place where like a famous rock star got murdered? I feel like I'd want to stay in the villa next door. But for the reader, it's fantastic. Math, family tree, and collective giggle. The OG of psychological thrillers in so many ways. It sounds so good. He takes an offer that it sounds like maybe he should have refused. I've said this 3 times. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse and welcome to another book recommendation video. So bingo is over, but I just can't stop recommending books, partially because some of these are books that I want to read. So in typical fashion, I have read a book recently, The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and the house in that book is such a central character, kind of like how New York City was a character in Sex and the City, but I love when setting, when place, when a house, when a location plays such a big part in a story that of course it got me thinking about all the books that I love where the house has a part in the story. And then I started to look through my shelves and find a bunch of books that I have that have that, would we call it a trope? Call it a setting that has an impact on the story, but a whole bunch of books that I want to read. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about all the books. So if you missed my April wrap-up where I talked about The Only One Left by Riley Sager, you should definitely go check that out. I rave all about the book because of course I absolutely loved it. By the time you guys are seeing this, it should be out in the world. It comes out on June 20th. I am desperately waiting for my pre-order to arrive, but I loved it. So set in Maine at an old dilapidated mansion, which back in 1929 was just this beautiful, amazing place. And over the course of the next few decades, it has sort of hit some hard times. It's 1983 when the book opens. So we get to see how that house has such an impact on the storyline. So again, if you haven't seen my previous review, go check it out. But Riley Sager does so many things that I love, which you guys know if you follow me, but one of my favorite things he does is how he weaves setting into his story. And I very much think that if you were a big fan of Lock Every Door or Home Before Dark, that The Only One Left is a good Riley Sager book for you. I mean, I think they're all great, but if you are like leaning into these maybe a bit, that might be a better one for you. So Lock Every Door is set in New York City. We are in an apartment building. It is super exclusive. It's based on the Dakota. It's called the Bartholomew. And in this one, we are following a woman named Jules. She has lost her job. She has broken up with her boyfriend who she shared an apartment with. So she has lost her apartment and she basically needs a place to live. She has no family. She has great friends who are like willing to help her, but Jules wants to stand on her own 2 feet. So she gets an offer she cannot refuse to be an apartment sitter in this uber exclusive building. Money she can't turn her nose up at, she just can't say no. She can't say no. So there are some rules that come with taking the apartment, including like you have to sleep there every night. You can't talk to the residents because they're all kind of like bougie, like quasi-famous people. And she thinks no big deal because she wants the money. And even when things get a little bit weird, she hunkers down to get that money. But this building is definitely a creepy place to live. And then speaking of creepy, we have Home Before Dark. This is following a woman named Maggie. She has inherited a house that her family had when she was younger called Bainbury Hall up in Vermont. A house that she actually thought her parents had sold when she was younger because they lived there for like 3 weeks. And they wound up leaving in the middle of the night because this is kind of an Amityville horror type of house. And her father wound up writing this best-selling blockbuster nonfiction book about the ghosts and the things that go bump in the night in this house and why they had to flee it. But Maggie never really believed that that was the case. But when she comes back to the house, she happens to be a house flipper, which is amazing. She starts to have some weird experiences and she starts to wonder, was her father right all along? What is going on at this house? So house plays a huge part in it. This is super creepy. This is one of my favorite Riley Sager books. I also binged this. I would say when I was reading The Only One Left, it gave me vibes of this. Like I was having a very reminiscent reading experience feeling to this one. So again, highly recommend it. But shockingly, there are other authors who do an amazing job at creating setting with houses. So to go to a classic, we have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. So I read this finally for the first time in 2021. And magically, I was not spoiled for this book. It originally came out in 1939, or 1938, excuse me, read. And I really loved it. And after reading this, I realized how many books are winks and nods to Rebecca. So I loosely knew the story, but not even as loosely as I thought I did. But a very famous first line, "Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again." So in this book, we are following a main character. She is never named in the book. And she winds up getting swept up into this love affair with a man named Max de Winter. His first wife has died, and our main character, who again remains nameless in the book, winds up moving to Manderley with him. And not everyone is very happy that she is there, and there are definitely some strange occurrences that are going on in Manderley. So I very much enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it. I am not a classics reader. I am not really... I don't think we can call it, would you call this historical fiction? Because it was written in 1938, but not my go-to, but I really enjoyed this. It definitely reads, I don't know if I would say like modern day psychological thriller, but sort of the OG of psychological thrillers in so many ways. And I do think if you read this, you will realize how many books and movies have taken inspiration or make reference to this, and that was what I really enjoyed so much. So I had been reading the J.T. Ellison book, Her Every Lie. I'll put it up over here for you guys because I'm sure I'm getting that one wrong. A couple years ago, and it was about a wedding set in Italy, and I was watching an interview with her afterwards, and she talked about how it was her Rebecca book. And I was like, what is this she speaks of? Like, I knew what Rebecca was, but I'm like, what do you mean it's your Rebecca book? And then when I read this, I was like, oh, like I got all like the allusions and sort of the Easter eggs and the winks and nods, and I had a great time with it. So highly recommend it. I, true confession, did basically all of this on audiobook, so might be a good route for you if this feels intimidating. I found it very intimidating, but loved it after I read it. So another book I read a long time ago is The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney. So I mentioned this in another video that I did do for Bingo about a page to screen book recommendation. So this is on, I feel like I get it wrong every time. I'm pretty sure it's on HBO. And my plan was to reread this book and then watch it. And collective giggle, I have not reread this book and I have not yet watched the show. But one of these days. So in this one, it says, please make a list of every possession you consider essential to your life. The request seems odd, even intrusive, and for two women who answer, the consequences are devastating. So in this book, we follow two different women, Emma and Jane, in two different timelines, and they both wind up living in this apartment. And it is an architectural masterpiece, minimalist in design, but there are rules. So kind of like a lock every door situation. And it says, the enigmatic architect who designed the house retains full control. No books, no throw pillows, no photos or clutter, no personal effects of any kind. The space is intended to transform its occupant, and it does. So this is definitely creepy. I really enjoyed this book. I would go into it moderately blind because I feel like you are best served by doing that. But this is such an interesting exploration of setting as character. So this came out in 2017. I was just trying to look. And I found it very fascinating. And I really would love to revisit it because, again, it's been years since I read it. I got it when it first came out. And I really liked it. It's definitely veers to a bit of the dark and messed up, which should surprise absolutely nobody. But really an interesting way of using setting as a character. So I had a very good time with this one. And I'm super interested to see how the adaptation of this kind of plays all the things out. So another one, we're just going to jump all over the place because that's what we do. And by we, I mean me. The next one is The Christmas Murder Game. This is by Alexandra Benedict. So I read this at Christmas time last year, saved it for that. This is a book that I had originally believed to be a cozy mystery based on how it looks and based on the name. Like I was like, oh, Christmas Murder Game. This is going to be like a fun Clue style kind of mystery type of thing. It's definitely darker than I thought it was going to be, and I really loved it. So I would say it has Knives Out vibes, but goes a bit darker than that. So in this one, it says 12 clues, 12 keys, 12 days of Christmas. But how many will die before 12th night? So this is an annual Christmas game at Endgame House, and the Armitage family gathers every year to play the game, except for one of the cousins. So Lily has not been back since her mother died 21 years ago, and she has no intention of returning. But this year she gets an invitation from her mother's sister, so her aunt, math, family tree. And in addition to promising whoever wins the game this year, they're going to win the keys to the house, Lily has promised that she will get the answers behind her mother's death, which have always haunted her. So much like with Jules in Lock Every Door, it is an offer that she cannot refuse. So she accepts the invite, she goes, and she spends what's supposed to be the 12 days of Christmas with her cousins. And it's not all fun and games. It's games. But for some people, it's not so fun. But for the reader, it's fantastic. So that was a great one. And then another one that does not, I mean, I feel like it should go without saying that most of these, all of these are thrillers, horror, something of that vein. It's not fun for a lot of our characters. So the next one I have is 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. I am such a big fan of her and of her writing. And one of the things I love the most about Catherine Ryan Howard, so I have now read 3 of her books. And I just ordered, they reissued the paperback of Rewind, which is the last book of hers that I have, that I don't own. And I pre-ordered The Trap, which comes out in August. So I'm working my way towards 0 with her. But anyway, every book of hers that I have read so far, she does something different in the storytelling technique. So The Nothing Man is a book within a book. Runtime has a screenplay interwoven into it. This is a panorama book that does not specifically lean into panorama, but we do have 2 people who met a couple weeks before shutdown in Ireland, and they decide to quarantine together. And when the book opens, the police have arrived at the apartment and they find a dead body. And in the book, we don't know, magic, who it is, like the magic of the book. We don't know who the dead body is in the apartment, but we see multiple POVs and we see police investigation in the present tense, and then we see we lead up to the 56 days that are spent in the apartment. I feel like I'm doing a crap job of talking about this one. It's really good. I feel like go into it a bit blind. So Sierra and Oliver are the ones who meet in a supermarket. So we see things from both of their point of views. I know with some people they didn't love, because we will see sort of the same scene twice in some ways from both of their perspectives. I thought it was really clever and really smart the way this was done. I found it to be super compulsive. This is a book that I did a combination of reading it and listening to the audiobook because it was a book that I just needed to be in at all times. The audiobook was tremendous, but their life for these 56 days revolves around the apartment that they are living in and that they are quarantined in together. And I just thought it was great because I feel like you could feel the claustrophobia of March 2020, April 2020. I feel like you can feel this claustrophobia in the apartment, mindful of the fact that these are 2 people who literally met at a supermarket 2 weeks ago, went on a date one night. Lockdown is happening. They both are single. They don't have family around. They decide to just quarantine together. And all of a sudden it's like, who am I living with? Who is this person? What have I just decided to do? And it's fantastic. She is tremendous. She is tremendous. I can't wait to continue to read her backlist and then for The Trap to come out. It's going to be great. So another author that I am in desperate need of doing a lot of catch up on her backlist is Simone St James. This is the book of cold cases. I also would say that The Sundown Motel is another one which is great for place, although, I mean, it doesn't matter. That's an apartment, that's a hotel, this is a house. So anyway, this is another creepy mansion vibe. So in this one, once again, we have dual timelines. We have 1977 in Clear Lake, Oregon, and then 2017. And we are following a true crime blogger who has been obsessed with true crime. Hence, she's a true crime blogger. And she works in a doctor's office during the day. And then a woman comes in, patient, who our true crime blogger Shay recognizes as a woman who was known as the Lady Killer, Beth Greer. So back in 1977, she was the prime suspect in a string of murders of men in town, but the police never had enough evidence to convict her. But that did not stop the town from deciding that she was guilty. So Beth has lived in this mansion all of these years. It was her family's house, much like the family in The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So in this one, we have Shay interviewing Beth. Why am I calling her Claire? Her name is Beth. Beth Greer. Where am I getting people's names from? Claire isn't in any of these books. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Beth has agreed to be interviewed by Shay while she's looking into these past murders, and the two form a little bit of a bond. And strange things are happening in this house. So again, we get the dual timelines, we get a lot of complex family relationships, we get a lot of secrets, we have a lot of baggage that our characters are carrying around with them. If you are a Simone St James reader, then you know that she sometimes dips a toe, sometimes dives headfirst into the supernatural. So not unusual to get some of that weird, creepy, ghosty stuff in it. I will say the Sundown Motel definitely freaked me out. This one didn't scare me as much, but still like kind of gave me the creeps, the way The Home Before Dark gave me the creeps, the Riley Sager book. So I really enjoyed it. I do love a true crime vibe. I love the past and present timelines, and she does a great job. Again, I've only read 2 of her books so far, but I feel like she always does a great job in these 2 books of creating just complex, really interesting female characters. And she just, I feel like her perspective, how the town is looking at them, judgments that are made about these women, particularly with Beth in the past, I just find it really, really interesting. So I think she just crafts like amazing characters, great setting, and I was totally hooked. So I binged this one like around Halloween last year. It was definitely a good one. So if you're in the mood for something like creepy, ghosty, that could be a good selection. And speaking of creepy, ghosty, this is a book that I have not yet read, and I was going to read it for like spooky season last year, but I think much like my Dark Academia TBR, I made a plan and then I sabotaged myself. But this is White Smoke. This is by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a YA, I feel like thriller horror. I don't know if we totally go into the line of horror with this one. So in this one, we are following a girl named Marigold, teenager, and she says Marigold is running from ghosts. The phantoms of her old life keep haunting her, but a move with her newly blended family from their small California beach town to the embattled Midwestern city of Cedarville might be the fresh start she needs. So her mom gets a new job, she has a new stepfather, and then she has a bratty 10-year-old stepsister named Piper. So they move into this picture-perfect house on Maple Street, and their picture-perfect house is sitting in between dilapidated houses, surrounded by wary neighbors, and it has secrets. So it says household items vanish, doors open on their own, lights turn off, shadows walk past rooms, voices can be heard in the walls, and there's a foul smell sleeping through the vents, which only Mary seems to notice. So I don't know if we get horror, if we get ghosty, if there's going to be an explanation behind all the creepiness that's happening. It's pitched as a classic haunted house book. Gosh, words. So I'm really intrigued. I for sure need to be reading this one. I read Monday's Not Coming, which I thought was absolutely phenomenal. I really enjoy her writing. I really enjoyed her characters. So I'm excited for this. I definitely just need to be in the ghosty mood. And I would like to make a plan, but as soon as I do, you know it's going to mess me up. So I'm just going to say I will read this, and when I do, I will let you guys know what I think. But ghosty, haunted house, YA vibes. Words. Okay, if you are in the haunted house mood, I've got another one for you, which I also haven't read yet, but I will. It's called Devil House. This is by John Darnielle. And in this one, we are following another true crime writer. And he takes an offer that it sounds like maybe he should have refused. So in this one, it says, Gage Chandler is descended from kings. That's what his mother always told him when he was a child. So he is now a true crime writer with one grisly success and a movie adaptation to his name, along with a series of subsequent less notable efforts. But now he's got the offer. Now he's got the chance for the big break. To move into the house where a pair of briefly notorious murders occurred, apparently the work of disaffected teens during the satanic panic of the 1980s. Chandler finds himself in Milpitas, California, a small town whose name rings a bell. His closest childhood friend lived there once upon a time. He begins his research into the murders with diligence and enthusiasm, but soon the story leads him into a puzzle he never expected, back into his own work and what it means, back to the very core of what he does and who he is. So it says it blurs lines between fact and fiction that combines daring formal experimentation with a spellbinding tale of crime, writing, memory, and artistic obsession. So I don't know what that means, but I have heard great things about this book, and like off the top of my head, I need to do a better job of keeping track of where I get the book recommendations, because I will see somebody post about it, talk about it, review it, like whatever it is, and I'll add it to my Amazon list, or I'll add it to, so I have like my public Amazon list that you guys can see, and then I have my private list of just sort of like on my radar, and if I'm like really being good about life, I'll put it on Goodreads, but I don't always take note of where the recommendation came from. Somebody was talking about this book and caught my attention. So there you go. That's one that I haven't read yet. It's one of a few I haven't read yet. So another author who does a bang up job of setting is Ruth Ware. So let's start with The Death of Mrs. Westaway, because it's on top and because this is probably one of my favorite of her covers, if not like all the covers. Trying not to glare on you guys. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So in this book, we are following a woman named Hal, and 3 years ago, her mom passed away, and Hal is very much on her own, trying to make ends meet. She is basically just sort of like scrounging money and really having a hard time of things. And she gets home one night and she winds up getting a letter in the mail, and it bequeaths her a substantial inheritance from her grandmother. But Hal knows this can't be right because her grandparents have been dead for more than 20 years and she has no other family. But she also has a lot of bills piling up. Like I said, she's like just trying to make ends meet. So her curiosity gets the best of her, and she decides to go to the will reading just to see. So Hal does tarot card readings. She can read people. She can sort of like hyper observant, hoping to put these skills to good use. She is intentionally, with some somewhat bad intentions, entering the situation, knowing that this letter is not meant for her, but she needs the money, so she's kind of curious what's going on. So she finds herself at Trepasson, the sprawling estate in the English countryside where the deceased Mrs. Westaway's family has gathered to pay their respects and to claim their bequest. But it doesn't take long for Hal to realize that there's something very, very wrong about this strange situation, and the inheritance is at the center of it. So this definitely has some Manderley vibes. This was a book that I actually saw Ruth Ware talk about it. This is like one of the last live bookstore discussions that I got to go to way back when. And she talked about how Rebecca influenced this, and with Manderley. And this house where the family lives and where they gather and where Hal goes to plays a very central part in the story. It's definitely like part of the atmosphere of all of it, the entire countryside estate. And I absolutely loved it. So I haven't read this since it first came out, and this is definitely a book I would love to reread. I am, as I film this, reading The It Girl, which is Ruth Ware's book that came out last year, and 0 Days is on its way to me. So in my unofficial trying to read to zero, I want to get caught up, and then I would love to go back and reread her books like I'm doing with Riley Sager and Jennifer Hillier, because I love her so much. And just to prove it, here's another one, The Turn of the Key. So this is low-key inspired by The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, which I have not read, but I just know that that's the facts of it all. So this one has a little bit of kind of a similar Girl Before vibe, in that we have this smart house that is controlled by the architects who designed it. And in this one, the architects who designed it are the owners and the parents of the kids that our main character, whose name is Rowan, has been hired to nanny for. So she moves into this house, and it is Heather Bray House. I don't know where these names come from. Like, I'm so jealous of like the smart, clever names that authors come up with for these places. So this is a home fitted out with all the modern conveniences in the beautiful Scottish Highlands. And it has this picture-perfect family who's living in it. And it says what Rowan doesn't know is that she's stepping into a nightmare. One will end with a child dead and herself in prison awaiting trial for murder. So when the book opens, we know that. I did not just spoil like I did not just drop a bomb on you guys. And we go back in time, and we see what happens when Rowan arrives at this house. And this is another one of those creepy houses where the house very much feels alive. The house is very much a character. The house very much influences our characters and our story and what's happening here. And it is sufficiently creepy and definitely weird. And I really enjoyed it. And I talked about how the characters in this reminded me of, and I know this is a stretch, but work with me, in The Handmaid's Tale, where I want to call her June because she's June in the movie, but she's not June in the book, where Offred winds up partnering with the chauffeur for the commander. And there is a relationship here with Rowan and the gardener where they have like that same connection. So it's not a Handmaid's Tale type of a story. Let me just press pause on that right here. But I feel like the connection and the banter between the two of them reminded me of that when I first read it, and it's stuck out in my head. So anyway, really enjoyed this. Super creepy house. Highly recommend it because that's why I'm here. So I've got a few more left. Okay, let me see. I haven't read one of them, so let's start with that one. So the next one I have is The Family Plot by Megan Collins, another book that I saw somebody and probably somebody else rave about. So I was like, me too, let me get it. So this one says, they love true crime until they're at the center of it. I love true crime. I love true crime. Okay, so it says at 26, Delilah Lighthouse is haunted by her upbringing. Raised in a secluded island mansion deep in the woods, there it is, and kept isolated by her true crime obsessed parents, she is unable to move beyond the disappearance of her twin brother Andy when they were 16. Following her father's death, Delilah returns to the house where the family makes a gruesome discovery. Buried in their father's plot is another body, Andy's. Sounds so good. Delilah is quick to blame Andy's murder on the serial killer who terrorized the island for decades. But as she grapples with her own grief and horror, she realizes that her eccentric family and the mansion itself may hold the answers to what happened to her twin. So, I have not read anything by Megan Collins. This came out a couple years ago, 2021. Look at me getting that right. And I am just super intrigued by this one. So, you guys know I love true crime, and the entire video is about houses being characters and having a key role in this. So, I am guessing that this secluded island mansion deep in the woods is going to be great. Okay. Another mansion, not secluded, but set in Italy. This is The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. I read this earlier this year. I totally loved it. I'm such a major fan of hers. Can we talk about her new book, The Heiress? The cover got released. I got a NetGalley arc. I'm so super excited. I love her so much. She does dark and messed up women, men, places, things, just amazing. So in this one, again, we have dual timelines. We are following Emily and Chess in the main timeline. So they were the best of friends when they were younger. They were totally inseparable. They are now in their 30s and their bond has been strained. They've grown apart. You were older. Emily got married. Their careers took off. Like, just things happen. So now they reunite and decide to plan a girls' trip to Italy. So they are both writers. Chess is luring Emily there as like, we can go and we can just write all summer. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Like, let's just get out of town. We both have reasons to get away. Let's get away. Let's do the thing. It's going to be amazing. So they wind up staying at this place called Villa Estes. And it is famous for the fact that in 1974, it was known as Villa Rosado. And it was rented for the summer by notorious rock star Noel Gordon. And he brought along upcoming musician, his girlfriend, the musician's girlfriend, a bunch of people. They were going to write, they were going to hang out, they were going to have the summer of their life. And somebody wound up getting murdered. So it's kind of a murder house. And Emily winds up digging into this past mystery. When she gets there, she becomes super fascinated by it. There's a lot of lure and mystery around what happened in 1974, and she can't help but be pulled in by the house and the mystery and the people who used to live there or who stayed there. So we get dual timelines in this one as well. I would say it's like a little bit of like a Daisy Jones vibe with the 70s rock star bit to it. This was inspired a bit by Mary Shelley when she went away with other writer friends and wrote Frankenstein when she was younger. Am I making up that there was like a Manson family vibe to this? Oh yeah, Says it right here on the inside flap. Inspired by Fleetwood Mac, the Manson murders in the infamous summer Percy and Mary Shelley spent with Lord Byron at a Lake Geneva castle, the birthplace of Frankenstein. The villa invites you to its deadly legacy. So, long buried secrets, very complicated female friendship, which I absolutely love. I think there's such a tremendous depiction of the complicated female friendship in this. I love a book about writers. I had initially done the audiobook of this, which was read by Julia Whalen. Nothing more to say, right? Nothing more needs to be said. And then I was super lucky to have this gifted to me, and I just saw it in here and I'm trying to find it, from Janine, and I'm so happy to have it in my collection, and it's totally beautiful. She is another author that I need to be rereading. I'm also just realizing that I'm kind of like dressed for the occasion for these books. Not planned. This one's great. Absolutely great. Such a great creepy villa. I'm like, I want to go to Italy and stay in a villa and write all the time, but I don't know that I would want to stay in a place where somebody got murdered. Would you guys want to stay at a place where like a famous rock star got murdered? I feel like I'd want to stay in the villa next door. Just saying. And then for my finale, another one of my favorite authors, Lisa Jewell, The Family Upstairs. So I have the sequel to this, The Family Remains, which I have not read yet. And I don't know if it has the same location as this book has. So in this book, we have, once again, multiple POVs, multiple timelines. I love Lisa Jewell so much. I absolutely devoured this book. And in this one, we are following a woman named Libby. So it says, soon after her 25th birthday, she returns home from work to find the letter she's been waiting for her entire life. So she is going to find out who she is. She's going to find out who her parents are. She's going to find out her history. And she does find all that out. But she also finds out that she is the sole inheritor of their abandoned mansion on the banks of the Thames in London's fashionable Chelsea neighborhood. So the house is very run down because no one has lived there or taken care of it in 25 years. And nearly 25 years ago, the police were called to 16 Cheyenne Walk with reports of a baby crying. So when they arrived, they found a healthy 10-month-old safe and sound in the upstairs bedroom. In the kitchen, 3 dead bodies, all dressed in black, were seemingly posed next to a hastily scrawled note. The 4 other children reported to live there were gone. What really happened? So we find Libby trying to look into her past, look into this mystery, which was completely unsolved. There are questions, there's speculation, there's rumors. We start to piece together what actually happened in this house. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. I thought this was so smart, so well done. Again, Lisa Jewell does such a great job with creating characters, with creating just the links between all of the storylines, how everything is woven together so beautifully. And I'm very curious to see what happens in the next book. So I don't know if we continue any time at this brownstone or if locations change. And I'm not going to spoil anything from book to book. All I know about book 2 is that we will have some recurring characters. We have a new character, and I'm excited to find out about it. So I do have it. It's on my 23 and 23. But in the meantime, house plays a critical part in the story of this one. So you have to read it. You have to read it. If you haven't already, you have to. You just do. You just do. So there it is. Houses as settings. Let me know, you guys, which books do you love where there's houses as setting? I know that I have missed a ton of them, but I just love that. I hate calling it a device because that feels like I'm like diminishing it in some way, but I love how place and character can, or place and location and setting can be a character in a book, and how it is so critical. And one of the things that all of these authors do in the books that I have read in the pile is they're so descriptive. You feel like you're there, like you can see it, you can smell it, you can feel it, whether it's like cold, it's hot, you know, things are cracked, wallpaper is peeling, there's creepiness abounding, like whatever it is. I feel like all of these authors do such a tremendous job of physically putting us in that location where you feel like you're there. And it's just, I'm so impressed with all of these people. So let me know which ones you have a favorite of, what you would recommend to all of us, and we will talk down below. I will see you guys in another video really soon. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out, and take care, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.